I guess we are live and rolling. Happy Friday. It's pretty dang late on a Friday night. Got back from some state basketball not too long ago. We have a lot to interact with in the NFL world. I haven't been making content in a little while. I've been making like maybe one or two short form videos a week. I'm going to zoom in a tiny bit. Been pretty dialed in on the free agency stuff. I actually rejoined my old high school basketball coaching staff for the playoffs, so it was pretty locked in for that. But now that's over. We made it to state, lost in the first round, really good game. Now we're kind of back on the content creation grind, so I'm going to lock into some NFL stuff, free agency news, got a little sidebar over here. If you've been here since day one, I appreciate your support. If you're just joining and you like what you see and you want to be a return viewer, go ahead and press that subscribe button. I would really appreciate it. But with that being said, we are going to go ahead and get to some NFL headlines, starting with the Max Crosby trade drama, which when this trade went down, I remember being pretty shocked. I actually am not the one who saw it. My girlfriend was like, "Oh, Max Crosby just got traded." And I was like, "What? Like to the Ravens?" And I went and checked, and sure enough, 2 first-round picks, 14th and a 2027 first. And I think it makes a lot of sense if you are a team like the Ravens, who you feel like you have one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I know it kind of feels like maybe they got cold feet in the sense that, yeah, you have Lamar Jackson, you want to do everything you can to win, given the fact that you have him, but they had the 14th overall pick for a reason. I know they could have made the playoffs had Tyler Loop hit that field goal, but when they made that trade, I understood the logic behind it. You want to maximize the window of that elite, transcendent player, and it did look like Lamar lost a step last year. Maybe we can attribute most of that to the injury. That's what I'm hoping we're able to do. We'll see. But when that trade ended up getting sent back, like it just went gone, kaput, no mas, I couldn't help but wonder if they were looking at the free agent market, seeing Trey Hendrickson sitting there like, well, hey, we could just get this 14th pick back, have the 2027 pick back, and then get a player who's maybe 75-80% of what Max Crosby is. And by the time they made that decision, again, it's kind of like reading the terms and conditions. We always just click through them, and it never really comes back to bite us. Well, the terms and conditions of that trade were it's not official until the start of the new league year. And so we hear that and go, yeah, whatever. But that actually wound up mattering and ended up making a pretty big impact on the news and what we thought of the trade. Like it just didn't even end up happening. And I can't help but wonder if the Ravens were sitting there kind of looking at the landscape, viewing their options and going, you know what? It's not official. We've vetoed, or that's not the right word, but you hear what I mean. We've sent back or rescinded a few trades before because of medical issues, and if Trey Hendrickson available, maybe we've been talking to him and maybe we have a pretty good idea that he would like to sign with us. Let's go ahead and keep next year's first. Let's go ahead and keep the 14th overall pick. You have a first-year head coach who probably wants to be able to take the guy he wants this year. He probably also wants to take the guy he wants next year, and then if you need to make a move for a player, now you have more flexibility to do so. It just kind of felt like maybe they felt they could afford to go ahead and cancel that deal. I don't know if it's going to be something where other teams think it's shady and maybe they don't want to do business with the Ravens. My take on it is, like, this is one of the very few times where you agree to the terms and conditions of Apple and all of a sudden you get an email saying you owe them $20 for XYZ. It's like, yeah, probably never going to matter, right? Most trades that happen before the start of the league year get pushed through and end up happening, and we've never seen anything like this before. So I do understand the gamesmanship behind potentially shutting that down, but I don't think that's what happened here. For the Raiders, I would understand being a little upset about this. You just went and spent all this money in free agency, right? You got Tyler Linderbaum, you got a couple linebackers, Quay Walker. I forget the other one they signed. You go ahead and sign Jalen Naylor, who's like a decent, like complimentary receiver. I don't think he's anything special, but he's a veteran. There's a lot worse players in the league you could surround Fernando Mendoza with. I think it could end up being a blessing in disguise, though, if financially they're able to make it work, which in the NFL, there's always a way to restructure, consolidate, push things down the line, right? There's always a way to do stuff like that. I'm wondering if they look at the team they've built so far in free agency, understand they have Fernando Mendoza coming up, understand they have the first pick, or a top 5 pick, rather, in the second round. Maybe having Max Crosby around isn't such a bad thing. The relationship was kind of already fractured, it seemed, heading out. Now it's kind of on Max to be the guy that the Raiders want him to be, just from like an effort and like buy-in standpoint. And that's never been an issue with him. He's always been one of the most dedicated, hardworking, respected players in the NFL. And now that he failed a physical, it's kind of on him. Like, he has to prove now that he isn't damaged goods. He has to prove that he is a winning player. Like, hey, the Ravens messed up. Like, he has a chip on his shoulder already. Maybe that chip has doubled in size, and now maybe the Raiders are this year's Bears, right? There always seems to be a team that kind of comes out of nowhere. Like, the Jaguars this year did that. They didn't get a new quarterback like the Raiders are going to, but you get a new head coach, you sign some new free agents. Look at the Patriots this year. They went from 4 wins back-to-back seasons to making the Super Bowl. So I think it could wind up being a win-win for both sides, with the Raiders just kind of backing out, or with the Ravens, backing out, preserving their draft picks for the new regime. And then for the Raiders, you just added all these guys. Well, now you get Max Crosby on top of that, who is probably going to make a greater impact this year than anyone you would have taken with the Ravens pick, at 14. More recent news is Kyler Murray going to the Minnesota Vikings on a 1-year deal. I released a short form video about this on TikTok yesterday. I'm not a JJ McCarthy hater. I don't know anything about him personally. I don't really have anyone commentating on my performance at work, but I'm also not making millions of dollars. He just wasn't very good last year, and clearly the Vikings, now without their GM, do not want their future to be tied to him. They're at least willing to go explore other avenues, and I don't really think you can blame them for that. Looking at some numbers here, he played 10 games in 2 years, J.J. McCarthy did. He failed to reach 160 yards in 6 of those 10 games, despite having Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. I know Jordan Addison missed a few games with suspension. T.J. Hawkinson's probably a little more name value than he is production, but he's still an average, if not above average, tight end. 57% completion percentage, 11 touchdowns, 12 picks. 6 fumbles. So just circling back on those stats. The 5th most interceptions in the league, despite being 31st in dropbacks. Again, top 5 in interceptions while playing 10 games. He was the only player in the NFL to have 6 fumbles in 10 games or fewer. Per Next Gen Stats, he took more than 2.5 seconds to throw on 71.8% of his passes. That's a long time for NFL standards. It's actually the 3rd highest mark of any quarterback in the past 8 years. He took 27 sacks on 288 dropbacks. Sam Darnold took 27 sacks on 517 dropbacks. Bryce Young took 27 sacks on 538 dropbacks. These dudes were taking almost twice as many dropbacks and took the same amount of sacks as J.J. McCarthy. You put all those things together, this is not a guy who... this team still won 9 games with multiple starting quarterbacks. Carson Wentz was getting a lot of reps this year. They have the expectation to win now. This was a team that just plugged 1 year of Sam Darnold in and won 14 games. This is a team that plugged 10 games of J.J. McCarthy in and still wound up 9-8. Like, they do not feel like there's a ton of patience around this team. Like, they want to produce victories and win and go contend for at least the playoffs, if not, win multiple playoff games and ideally get back to where they were just 2 short years ago. And I think it's a unique situation for Kyler Murray to come in here where both he and his head coach both kind of need to prove something. I'm not saying either of them are coaching or playing for their livelihoods in the NFL. I think if Kevin O'Connell were to get fired, teams would be lined up to interview him and take him. I think if Kyler Murray were to get, if he weren't to get extended after this year, I still think he'd have an opportunity to start somewhere. That's just kind of the leash you get, if you will, when you're the number 1 overall pick. But these are 2 guys, Kevin O'Connell and Kyler Murray, who both don't have a playoff victory, if I'm not mistaken. Both come from, they're both NFC teams. Kevin O'Connell, former quarterback. Kyler Murray, potentially could have been a baseball player, but he's not. But they're both guys who probably feel like they're more capable of what they've produced. I think in any walk of life, when you look at yourself like, oh, I got to get my stuff together, or oh, I've kind of been lacking, I know I can be way better at XYZ. You kind of want to get an opportunity to prove that and maybe prove that to yourself, but also others. Like when you're in a publicly critiqued profession like these 2 guys are, where millions and millions of people are watching what you do and evaluating how good you are or not at your job, it's kind of time for them to maybe silence some haters. And the Vikings do have I don't want to say a championship roster without truly intimately knowing their team, but they got a top 3 receiver in the NFL. They got a pretty good play calling head coach. They got one of the best defensive coordinators in the league. I know they, haven't done well in the draft and they just fired their GM. But it just kind of seems like they were embarrassed by the Sam Darnold situation is how I read it. And I think this is the end for J.J. McCarthy in Minnesota. I think for every Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold and Geno Smith, there's a Zach Wilson, a Trey Lance, an Anthony Richardson. I know Will Levis was a 2nd-round pick, but he was picked right at the top of the 2nd round. Michael Penix might be heading this way. Sometimes guys just aren't good enough. And we can talk about, is it fair or not to move on from them so early? But honestly, when you see rookies come in and show tons of promise, even Bo Nix, who I haven't been the highest on, he's shown he can win games and put things together and make plays and string multiple games together after having a slump, right? Drake May didn't start in his entire rookie year, but he still had really, really good performances or stretches where he really popped. I know JJ had that one throw against the Lions on the right sideline to Naylor. He had his first good game of the year, week 1 of the season against the Chicago Bears. That was an excellent comeback victory, but it just hasn't been frequent enough. And then on top of that, you have the injury concern. So it's you have not shown enough promise for us to overlook your negative qualities and your lack of durability. For Kyler Murray, do I think this will work? I think I'm not sure if he was on the Cardinals when Bruce Arians was the head coach. I don't think they overlapped. I'm trying to see who were Kyler Murray's offensive coordinators. I'm willing to bet that Kevin O'Connell's probably the best offensive mind that he will have played with. Bruce Arians was the head coach for the Cardinals 2013 to 2017. And then Kyler Murray was drafted, I want to say around that same year, 2017. Kyler Murray was drafted in, let's see if my mouse, why is it bugging? What is going on? He was drafted in 2019. So Kevin O'Connell would be might be leaving someone out, but in my estimation, Kevin O'Connell would be the best offensive mind Kyler Murray's ever played with. Justin Jefferson would be the best receiver he's ever played with. I would imagine Brian Flores is probably the best defensive coordinator he's had while he's on the sideline. So I think this will be an interesting opportunity to see, hey, when you are not in a dysfunctional organization, when you have an elite receiver, I know Trey McBride's a stud. Trey McBride is absolutely awesome. This is not a diss to him at all. When you have a front office who at least knows what not to do, they got rid of Kwesi. You have offensive-minded head coach. Like, what everyone kind of looks a little worse when they're in a dysfunctional organization, and I know the Cardinals are kind of universally disrespected in that regard. What do you look like when you're dropped into a much more professional operation, an operation that even after letting Sam Darnold walk and win a Super Bowl is still very, very, very highly regarded across the league? He still gets to play in a dome for half the season. And in his division, gets to pick up another game in a dome against the Lions. Does have some more cold weather games now. We haven't seen Kyler play in a ton of those. But ultimately, this is a guy who was a former number 1 overall pick looking to show he has the goods or he has something. This seems like it is going to be as good of an opportunity as he'll get to kind of show what he has. I wanted to talk about the Chiefs landing Kenneth Walker and the Rams' 29th overall pick. The NFL offseason to me legitimately is it's like Madden. Like, that's my favorite part of doing Madden franchises, is seeing the trades and scouting the players and drafting them and looking at the depth chart. Same thing with like the college football dynasty league I'm in. I love the transfer portal and seeing the players' overalls improve. And that's what's made this offseason so fun, is moves like this. You got Kenneth Walker, who is easily the most dynamic running back the Chiefs have had since Jamal Charles. I know Jerick McKinnon had a pretty good few games, I guess, during some of their runs. But I know Kareem Hunt, had a really big roller coaster of a career, but I don't know how much I would ever say he's dynamic. I think Isaiah Pacheco, he runs hard, but his reputation kind of always seemed to exceed his actual production because of the team that he was on. Like, Kenneth Walker just wrapped up one of the better playoff runs for a running back we've seen in a long time, and he gives them an explosive, dynamic element out of the backfield they have not had in the Patrick Mahomes era. And I think that's going to be important for them to lean into as Patrick Mahomes is coming off of the most significant injury of his career. Their GM, Brett Veach, at the Combine mentioned how much they've invested in the interior of their offensive line. Creed Humphrey's making $18 million a year, and he was the highest paid center in the league until Tyler Linderbaum assessed the landscape and literally had the Raiders back up the Brinks truck. They have Kingsley Suamataia. They have Trey Smith, I believe, at guard. They just spent a first-round pick on Jonathan Simmons, right tackle, out of Ohio State, I believe. So they've invested heavily in the offensive line. I would imagine they'll continue to do so as they lean into the run game and try to protect Patrick Mahomes. And then they're kind of continuing their track record of letting cornerbacks, DBs walk. 2 of them go to the Rams. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But now they have pick 9 and pick 29. Seen a few different mocks have the Oregon tight end Kenyon Sadiq at 9. Wouldn't want to spend that high of a pick on a tight end. Even Kyle Pitts, who is probably the greatest tight end prospect of all time, at least in the scouting community. Like, he's a really good player. I like Kyle Pitts, but I don't want to spend a premium pick on that player. I would imagine they'll probably address their need at cornerback. Again, continue to lean on the offensive line. They've missed on receiver, at least with Xavier Worthy. Maybe they try to go ahead and get Patrick Mahomes another dynamic playmaker. I remember last season when Worthy got hurt and Rashee Rice was suspended, it was Hollywood Brown, Tyquan Thornton, Juju Smith-Schuster, I would not be shocked at all to see them invest in some better weaponry for Patrick Mahomes. Moving on to the Rams, they load up their secondary. They go ahead and get Trent McDuffie, who's a two-time All-Pro, kind of similar to when they traded for Jalen Ramsey before winning the Super Bowl in 2021. This is just what they do. I think it's in the last 8 years they've only used one of their own first-round picks. They do still have the 13th pick. Leading into the offseason, it was, the Rams are going to draft a corner. They're going to draft a corner. They have pick 29 and they have pick 13. Well, not only did they trade for Trent McDuffie, again, at just 25 years old, a two-time All-Pro, but they also went and snagged Jalen Watson, another Chiefs corner. He was drafted in 2022, played at least 500 snaps in every season of his career. Gets him a good contract, but 3 years for $45 million isn't anything crazy. So they made two huge moves to improve their secondary. And now I think at 13, maybe they go ahead and get a receiver. And I know initially off hearing that might sound strange. They have Puka Nacua. They have Devontae Adams. They use a lot of 3 tight end sets with Parkinson and Ferguson and Higbee. And I think there might have been another rookie I'm forgetting there. But Devontae is probably going to retire in the next year or two. Puka is pretty injury prone, absolutely amazing. Interested to see how they handle his upcoming contract extension. But I do think investing in another receiver is a pretty big need for them, even though they rely on 31 or 13. I don't know. It's late personnel using 3 tight ends and 1 back. I do think they need to ensure that they have quality receiving options for Matthew Stafford and in the future going forward. If you project forward 1 year, 2 years, what does that look like? We don't know what the quarterback's going to look like, A. And B, assuming Puka Nacua gets extended, there's not really much there after that. For a team like them with an old quarterback who is playing at a very, very high level, their biggest priority is right now, and that's why we're seeing rumors of them interested in A.J. Brown of the Philadelphia Eagles. And I saw Howie Roseman's asking price is a 1 and a 2 for A.J. Brown, which, considering he's 28, and that's what Devontae Adams went for to the Raiders when he was 29, a 1 and a 2, seeing what Devontae Adams did last year, multiple years after the fact, I think that's probably a fair price, especially considering the teams that are trading for him are probably good teams. So those draft picks are going to be probably somewhere in the 20s. I just don't know who needs a receiver enough and who's one receiver away and in a position to cough up a first-round pick and a second-round pick. I'm just thinking, who... The Rams, I guess, if you rolled out Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams, A.J. Brown, and you have Stafford back there, and they're beefing up their defense, they would have to be the runaway Super Bowl favorites. But if I'm just going through the divisions, in the NFC West, Seahawks, they only have 3 picks in this year's draft, at least in the first 3 rounds. They don't have anything in 4 or 5. I don't know if they have a 6th-round pick. I don't think they would give up a 1 and a 2 for A.J. Brown. Maybe they would. Maybe the Seahawks maybe that would be a good deal. I don't know. Lots of stuff I won't get to, like the Bills trading for DJ Moore. I guess since I'm talking about it right now, I do think that was a pretty dang good pickup for them. They had to give up a second, but that's pick 60. DJ Moore, kind of the type of receiver I wanted to see with Josh Allen. We have the Keon Coleman drama. Is he even going to be a good player? But those big jump ball receivers, that aren't great at separation, I don't think that's the best pairing with a guy like Josh Allen, who's so good at extending plays. I personally would rather them have a guy like DJ Moore who, when the initial play breaks down and Josh Allen escapes the pocket, I want someone who can put his foot in the ground and get open and separate, and then after receiving the ball, make something happen with the ball in his hands after the catch. That's what DJ Moore does. That's what he's done in his entire career. He's been used in the screen game, sweeps, in the backfield sometimes. That's when he's at his best, is when he has the ball in his hands. So I think that this is the first time he'll be on a team that's a contender, and at the same time he will be the number one receiver on a contender, on a team that gave up significant draft capital to go get him. I think that's going to wind up being a pretty fruitful marriage there in Buffalo. And for fantasy purposes, those of y'all who are here for fantasy stuff, shout out to you. That's kind of how I got started with all this. We're still doing fantasy stuff. No need to worry about that. For fantasy, I would have DJ Moore as conservatively a top 20 receiver. And when we start looking at things more tightly this offseason and do some rankings, I would not be shocked if he crept into my top 18 or 15. Looking at the biggest free agent spenders, I would be absolutely lying to you if I said I prepared a list, because I've been meaning to go live for a while. I needed to sharpen this skill set and, talk about some of this stuff. But a big part of why I haven't is like, oh, well, I got to make sure I'm prepared for all this. I need to make sure I have my topics written out. And although I do follow it pretty closely, I do not do the best at preparing like notes and stuff for these types of things. So I was like, you know what? I just got to learn by doing. I got to get out here and just go live and just talk about this stuff, and we'll get better by actually doing the thing. So we'll talk about some of the biggest spenders in free agency. I know the Titans spent a ridiculous amount of money. The Raiders and the Commanders as well. They both had a ridiculous amount of cap space. Let's just go to... see what the Athletics got. Free agent signings. The Raiders, they got Linderbaum. I already talked about them. Quay Walker, a few other guys. Trey Hendrickson, obviously, to the Ravens. The Panthers spending big money on two of the best three defensive players available in this free agent class. Jalen Phillips got an absolute massive contract, 4 years, $120 million. And then Devin Lloyd, heck of a season from the Jaguars, 5 picks last year, 74 tackles. He signs a 3-year, $45 million deal. So the same deal that the Rams signed Jalen Watson from the Chiefs for. So pretty good deal for them there. Scrolling down the list, Daniel Jones getting 2 years, $88 million is asinine to me. I get it. He had a pretty good start to the year, but that roster's pretty good. Jonathan Taylor was having a legendary start. And then that London game against the Steelers started to show some cracks, show some signs of regression. I think even the Falcons game might have been the week before that. He didn't look too good there. 68% completion, 3,000 yards before tearing his Achilles, 19 touchdowns, 8 picks. Again, Daniel Jones was playing pretty well, but it just kind of seems like an overreaction for them to give 2 firsts for Sauce Gardner, and now they're not a playoff team. They don't have a first-round pick this year. Oh, by the way, they don't have a first-round pick next year, so we really, really, really need to make sure that we're competitive. Well, you're banking on a 29-year-old. It's not old for quarterback standards at all, but coming off that Achilles injury, if we were to stack up all of the evidence we've seen from Daniel Jones up to this point in his career, the bad outweighs the good 5-1. So for them to give him $44 million a year, like where do you think that ranks in quarterback average annual value? I'm willing to bet that's top 10. If we're going average per year, he is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, he's 13th. So they're paying him like a top 15 quarterback. And at least the silver lining for them here is it's not for more than 2 years. Maybe they have it out in year 2. We'll see. We already talked about Tyler Linderbaum. Props to his agent. coming into this offseason, the highest paid center was making $18 million per year. That's Creed Humphrey. Tyler Linderbaum's making $27 million a year, absolutely blowing that previous figure out of the water. He's a first-round pick, pretty good run blocker, not a great pass protector. But hey, we saw Caleb Williams, in year 2 under Ben Johnson. Still a lot of stuff to clean up, but when Ben Johnson got to Chicago, the first thing he did was beef up the offensive line and then get him some weapons. I'd imagine the new head coach Clint Kubiak of the Raiders is going to want to do something similar for his rookie quarterback. If we're going to spend the number 1 overall pick on Fernando Mendoza, we're the only team that really gets a shot at a quality quarterback in this draft class, unless Ty Simpson or Garrett Nussmeier surprise people. Probably another name in there I'm forgetting. Let's make sure we maximize his ability and don't have him turn into what Geno Smith was last year. In addition to that, Tyler Linderbaum's going to make Ashton Genty more effective, helping run block in that interior. And if the run game's better, that's only going to be good for Fernando Mendoza. A couple other big signings here. Mike Evans to the 49ers was kind of surprising to envision him not in a Tampa Bay jersey. We'll talk about fantasy impact here in a minute for all those guys, but that'll be interesting to see. Jawan Jennings is a free agent. I didn't see if he signed anywhere yet. I know George Kittle, he's recovering from that Achilles injury, which at his age is got to be brutal. So I think getting a big body receiver for Brock Purdy, who he's thrown to Kittle, he's thrown to Jawan Jennings, like he likes having those big body receivers. I think that made a lot of sense there. We'll go ahead and skip over the 49ers beefing up their line. We can talk about that for a brief second. The Cowboys traded Odigizua. It's been a minute since I've had to pronounce his name. That might be the first time I've ever pronounced his name on camera or on microphone. I might have just called him Odie before. But I thought it was a pretty good pickup for the 49ers to go get him. They traded a third-round pick to get him. And this stat kind of shines a light on how much they needed an interior player on that line. In 2025, Jordan Elliott led the 49ers with 16 pressures. That's the 49ers interior defensive lineman. 16 pressures. Last year, Odigizua had 52. In the year before that, he had 60. So, Mykel Williams, first-round pick, tore his stuff up. Bosa, one of the best pass rushers in the league, tore his stuff up. You get those guys screaming off the edge, and now you have a more than competent player on the interior of your defensive line now. I just wanted to touch on that. Kind of an underrated signing that I think will wind up being really impactful. And then Malik Willis joins a couple former Packers, Jeff Hafley, who's the now head coach of Miami Dolphins, and John Eric Sullivan, the old Packers GM. They are all reuniting together in Miami, and for a contract that I felt was cheaper than what it was like rumored to be. Malik Willis, he's only being paid 21st in average annual value, 22.5 per year. So he's getting paid much closer to Justin Fields and Geno Smith money than he is Baker Mayfield money. I do like this move for the Dolphins. I know they ate $100 million in dead cap for Tua to leave, but I would much rather have him gone, have that much dead money on the books, be bad, right, without intentionally trying to be bad, but they're just going to be bad because of what their roster looks like, and now start to paint a picture of, okay, what can this future look like? We're not in a rush to where if Malik Willis shows flashes but isn't great in year one, we totally have to move on from him in year two. They can buy themselves 2 years where expectations are really low, where they can see what they have with Malik Willis, see what kind of vision Nick Hafley wants to create over there. They got rid of a lot of their expensive older players. Minkah Fitzpatrick got shipped off, I think, for a 7th-round pick to the Jets. Bradley Chubb got cut. Tyreek Hill got cut. It's kind of a just let's see what we can build here, and there's ultimate level of patience is what it feels like from my outside perspective. I know that for fantasy purposes, I don't love it. I don't love Mike McDaniel leaving for fantasy purposes. I think he was a cheat code for Devon Achane, for Jalen Waddle when Tyreek Hill went down. I still think Waddle will be a solid wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 for fantasy purposes. Maybe a little higher. I'll have to reevaluate that. Devon Achane, one of my favorite players in the league. I'll bump him down a good bit. I initially would have had him top 3, top 4, but now I'll probably have him around 7 or 8. Still really good guy. Still a mid-range RB1 for me in fantasy, but just not quite as excited without. Like Mike McDaniel did some absolutely awesome things in the run game when he was there. And they're not just going to get that value back. I don't even know who is the Miami Dolphins offensive coordinator, because he has pretty big shoes to fill. Bobby Slowick, 12 years of NFL coaching experience, previous stints as the offensive coordinator for the Texans. Well, there you go. I mean, the Texans the past couple of years were one of the worst red zone offenses in the league, down with the New York Giants. I know they didn't have a ton of great skill guys. I'm not super inspired by that hire, especially when you have the drop-off from Mike McDaniel. But hey, you never know. Malik Willis might be cooking with something over there. We'll just have to wait and see. And then what I was looking forward to talking about the most, just some instant reactions to some fantasy-related free agent fits. I'll just go to the top of this free agent list and just kind of give a rapid-fire reaction of how I think it impacts their value. Daniel Jones, like the only thing that's going to impact his value is how he's able to return off of his Achilles. In one quarterback leagues, I know he was pretty viable this past year, especially when he got some of that rushing upside, but I'm not very excited about him in general. Superflex, maybe you can, in Dynasty and stuff, maybe you can go get him for cheap because he's coming off that injury. I'm not super excited about him, though. Mike Evans, he still got juice against the Falcons week 15, I believe. He had like 13 targets, maybe it was 13 catches or 130 yards, something with a 1 and a 3 in there. I think he's still a pretty good player. He seems to be discounted just about every year in fantasy, and I would imagine he'll be even more discounted this year after being hurt for a lot of last year. No 1,000-yard season. Kenneth Walker, he's someone I would be selling high in Dynasty. Just the hype feels pretty high around him right now. I know the Chiefs are probably going to plan to use him and should be pretty good over there, but I don't think I'm going to want to draft him where Kenneth Walker is going to go. I wouldn't be surprised if Kenneth Walker is drafted as an RB1 this year. We'll see. I think he validated the hype this year when Charbonnet went down, and I don't think that the Chiefs are going to be shy with him. They're paying him a lot of money, near top of the market for running backs. He's got to be making top 8 running back money now. He's top 4. He's only 3 running backs make more than him: Saquon, Christian McCaffrey, and Derrick Henry. And I know when Bijan and Gibbs, their rookie contracts are up, they will become the highest paid running backs in the league. But Kenneth Walker, I think he's going to have a good season. I just don't know if I feel comfortable drafting him where he's going to be going in a lot of leagues. Malik Willis, I like the player. Just such a small sample size, but how can you not just be impressed when 2 years ago Jordan Love gets hurt, I think week 1 against the Eagles, and he comes in and leads a couple of victories. I think one of them was against the Titans. Very run-heavy game plans, though, in those games. And then this past year, if you watch that game against the Ravens, he was absolutely electric. His very small sample size, but 85% completion percentage, 422 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks, .66 EPA per drop back. I was saying Jarrett Stidham had a similar opportunity. If he just plays in the AFC Championship game in a contract year and just makes some plays and looks good, he's going to get an opportunity to start. Now, Malik Willis had a similar opportunity on a smaller stage, but he didn't just look good. He looked absolutely excellent. So I'm hoping he does well. Travis Achan, one of the biggest mindfucks of the offseason. Achan, it's not ETN, how we've been spelling it, ETN. No, it's Achan. Travis Achan. He said that in his introductory press conference either today or earlier this week. Coming off a really good year, I would say a career year. His first year under Liam Cohen, 1,400 yards from scrimmage, 13 total touchdowns. The Saints have invested a lot in their offensive line. They did pay him good money. I think he's making top 8, top 10 money for the running back position. He's going back to where he's from in Louisiana. So I think I like ETN as like a high-end RB2. He was my fantasy darling heading into this season, and I think I'll be pretty high on him again just because I really like the player. He was really, really good as a rookie, had another really good year stuffed in there, and then last year he was awesome. So although he has had some poor games, he's a really good pass catcher on offense that's lacking weapons. I just think ETN's a pretty safe, solid, you know how Javonte Williams was a low-end RB1, high-end RB2 this year? I think Travis Etienne is that plus in full PPR leagues especially. Alec Pierce, 4 years, $114 million. Way to go get the bag, buddy. I honestly think the biggest winner from this and the Michael Pittman trade is Josh Downs. Alec Pierce is going to be the primary focus of him, and Tyler Warren will be the primary focus of most defensive game plans next year. I think that he's good enough to provide value, but I don't know if he's good enough to overshadow or supersede or overcome the game plans that'll be thrown against him. He'll still get his, right? He's gonna have to be used more to justify giving him what is that, $28 million a year. But with Michael Pittman getting shipped out of there, I think Josh Downs is going to be freed up in so many underneath things. And if you've just watched any of the Colts, any football the past year where Josh Downs has been on the field and has the ball in his hands, or watch him run routes, Josh Downs is a really, 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 really good football player. And I think we're going to probably see pretty big glimpses of that this upcoming year, if I had to guess. I'm very high on Josh Downs this year. And I have been high on him the past couple of years and had nothing to show for it. So maybe this is me be like, see, I told you so. Guess we'll find out. We'll go through a couple more. Wan'Dale Robinson to the Tennessee Titans, gets reunited with Brian Daboll, right? And how can you blame him for wanting to go get that guy? 92 catches, 1,000 yards, 4 touchdowns. He is not the wide receiver one. They are going to draft a receiver. I can almost guarantee you they will. I would not be surprised to see them take one with their first pick. I know there's some reports that they might be interested in Jeremiah Love, which I wouldn't be surprised either. But since they didn't go get... I guess there weren't that many great receivers in this free agent class. They're either... I think they're going to go offense with that first pick. Maybe Wan'Dale Robinson, maybe Brian Daboll spent enough time with Wan'Dale as the one to feel comfortable rolling him out as the one. I just think with Cam Ward, you don't want to do anything close to what he had to deal with in year one. You really want to give him a springboard into year two. I do think that Robinson will be pretty dang good in PPR leagues. He should rake up a ton of targets, maybe not 140 like he had with the Giants last year, but I think Robinson's a pretty safe wide receiver too. Juwan Jennings still is unsigned. Jalen Naylor to the Raiders, it doesn't really change anything for me. Maybe he can be the number 2 option behind Brock Bowers. Who else do they have there? I know they have Jack Besh, who they drafted in the second round, I think, last year. Didn't hardly use him. Trey Tucker, Tyquan Thornton. Like, maybe Naylor can be a sneaky acquisition. Dallas Goedert still a free agent. Romeo Doubs, I guess he's the number one receiver there. I do think earlier in Romeo Doubs' career, he did make a handful of plays for the Packers where he showed, like, hey, like, I got good hands. I can make contested catches. Like, he is one of the better contested catch, spectacular catch receivers in the league. Interested to see how that plays out. Assuming he gets a pretty good role, maybe he impresses. I know in Green Bay it's always tough evaluating receivers because Matt LaFleur just does such a good job at being unpredictable and where the ball's going, and his tight ends, backs, and receivers all have pretty equal target share distribution. So maybe going to the Patriots where, I mean, Josh McDaniels, similar to Mike LaFleur, or is it Matt LaFleur? Matt LaFleur does some similar stuff there, but 4 years, 61 million, or 4 years, 68 million, excuse me. That's not paying him scrub money. They're giving him like discount wide receiver one money. A couple more. Rashid Shaheed, I would hope that they use him as more than just a returner. They're paying him $16-17 million a year. I would imagine to do more in the receiving game, not just the return game, but we will see. Isaiah Likely to the Giants, really like that for Jackson Dart. Lots of familiarity there with his coach, John Harbaugh. Go ahead and do one more. We already talked about Kyler Murray. Rico Dowdle to the Steelers. I'll drop a quick nugget here. I actually think this is a buy opportunity for Jaylen Warren. And I know that sounds counterintuitive. That's why he's a buy. Kenneth Gainwell just took up so many targets in this passing game. Rico Dowdle, although he's a capable receiving back, he is not a receiving back. Jaylen Warren is a very balanced back. He can run between the tackles. He's utilized a lot on tosses, and he's also a pretty good receiver. He's just like above average player from the backfield. I think that I don't think the Steelers are going to pass to running backs as much as they did this past year. Michael Pittman will make sure of that. But I do think a chunk, 50 to 60% of the targets Kenneth Gainwell was getting are going to go to Jaylen Warren. And I think Jaylen Warren's role is still going to remain largely what it is. He signed a contract extension coming into this past season. Now we're just replacing Kenneth Gainwell with Rico Dowdle, who's way more one-dimensional. So I think Rico Dowdle becomes not the number one back. His contract is 2 years, $12 million. Jaylen Warren's contract was it the same? Did they basically sign the same deal? This thing I just saw was 2 years, $11 million last year. So maybe they are, if they're paid similarly, that still doesn't hurt my point. I just think that Warren is going to take a good bit of the receiving volume that Kenneth Gainwell had last year. So that's all I got. If you're still here and you enjoyed this, I appreciate you. Go ahead and drop a subscribe if you enjoyed. Like, share with your friends. Press the bell thing. We're going to be doing a lot of other content. And then when fantasy stuff kicks up, really going to start pushing things into high gear. We're going to have position rankings, dynasty stuff. Right now, just really, really into the whole NFL offseason draft stuff coming up. So we'll keep digging into all that stuff. Appreciate you guys. Have a great rest of your day. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you soon. Deuces.